everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of Old Dudes, New Tricks. I'm Dwayne Chambers, and I'm here with Gary Collins. And today, we're going to talk about Gary's book, and Gary, a little bit more about Gary's background. But first, how you doing, man?
Good. You didn't call it Old Dogs, New Tricks.
I know. Well, luckily, we scrapped that last one. For you people who are listening, we had an episode last week that we did a full episode, and just it didn't turn out quite the way. So it's a podcast or a growing thing, and we weren't happy with the content, so we're coming back today and trying again. Take 2.
That's right. We won't just put shit up. We're not going to do that. We're not going to throw it up to throw it up.
Nope. Hey, before we get into that, I just wanted to kind of tell you about something that happened this weekend. And since this is about old dudes, you might relate to this. We have a monthly dinner club we do with 2 other couples. And it's like our one weekend out of the house from the kids. And so, all 3 couples have kids, and we look forward to this, just getting out for a few hours and hanging out and having a good time. But I'm like the old dude of the whole crew, 46-year-old married to a 35-year-old woman. And then my other friends are all around her age, and maybe I think the 2 of them are even younger than her. And so we go out every month. We go to a different restaurant in town, and we've been doing this for almost 7 years now. So it's pretty cool. But like I said, we really look forward to it. But man, I'm getting to the point now where if I go to the restaurant and, with my job and busy life, I don't drink anymore. And I swear I drink 1 beer and I piss 3-4 times a beer now. So we go to the restaurant and we're just, we sit there, get our table. I usually have a drink, and within 5 minutes I'm in the bathroom, and it's become this running joke now because I am constantly up and down. And it's like, what is
that
the deal?
Prostate? That prostate's just getting, good and swollen. It sounds like getting old. I don't have that issue. Well, it's getting worse. I used to say I had the bladder of a surgeon because I could hold. I've been known to hold it through an 8-hour car trip, including coffee. I'll just suck it up because I don't want to get out of the car and stop. Mm-hmm. And I actually did it this last time. I drove 7 hours straight on a road trip, and I have a truck, a diesel now, so I don't have to go get gas. I can drive for 7 hours straight on taking gas. I sucked it up, made it all the way. But now my thing is around 4:35 in the morning. That's when my bladder finally says, okay, you got to get up and go to the bathroom, or I just won't sleep. And I never used to have that. I used to be able to sleep all through the night, no problem, wake up, take my morning piss, and everything was good. Now, my piss wakes me up, and it sucks. I'm all, what do I do? So do I go to bed at 9:30, 10 to make sure that by the time I got to piss, it's time to get up anyway? Or what? I don't know. I can't. Or just stop drinking water after like 5?
Yeah. Well, I'm a twice a nighter. It's twice a night. I got a Fitbit that I've been wearing the last 3 weeks just to kind of monitor my sleep to see where I am and that whole deal. And I get up twice a night. That's what I'm averaging. Last night, man, after we came back, I got up 6 times.
Oh,
yeah,
God. It
was brutal. Because I work second shift, so I went to bed earlier, so I wasn't asleep. It's ridiculous. But everybody at the table, we were all talking, and even the women, most of them get up once a night. And I just miss those days where you go to sleep and wake up, and it's like, holy cow, 8 hours passed by.
And not have a hangover when you drink?
Oh my God, yeah. I got up. I probably only had 3 drinks last night, and got up and went to the bathroom one time and sat down, and my head was spinning, and I was like, am I going to throw up? It's just like, good Lord.
Well, and what has happened
to me?
No one ever believes that either. I remember when I was young and older people would say, oh, you just wait. That drinking and hangover is going to catch up to you. And I'm all, I'm fine. I'm good. And it was right around 30. I remember 30s when I first started getting real hangovers. And then they progressively got worse every year after that. And now they are misery. If I have 3 beers, the next day is torture. And if I have 4 or 5 beers or 6, I'm shot for like 4 days. I mean, I'm just completely off kilter. I'm a mess. I don't feel good. And yeah, this getting older stuff sucks.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I've got more wisdom. I don't make as many stupid mistakes as I used to, but now the body's given out. And you're like, oh, come on. Again, hence old dudes, new tricks.
Yeah. Well, hopefully somebody will have an answer to that. You know, I went to the doctor years ago about it, and they put me on a couple of things. The first thing they put me on was a sulfa drug, and they found out I was allergic to it, so my whole body broke out in a rash.
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. So they changed it, put me on something else, and I swear I was ready to fight constantly. It was not good for my psyche. It just made me an angry person, so I had to quit taking that one too.
Probably some form of steroid.
Probably, and I said, screw it, man. I'm just gonna be a night walker.
Well, I'm gonna go off on a tangent. The Walking Dead. We were talking about this last time in the episode that we're not going to use. Has anyone noticed that Daryl is gotten a lot bigger?
Yeah, he's jacked.
Am I missing something? Homeboy's got his arms covered up, and he looks like he got yoked really quick.
I know. It's like, what were they feeding him whenever he was with the saviors? You know, he was supposed to be in this dungeon for a long time, and he comes out bigger than he was when he went in.
Well, and at first I thought, well, now he's got a normal paying job, so starving actor. Now they start eating, getting fat. But I was really looking. I went, oh no, he's hiding. It's the Barry Bonds effect. He looks like he's pretty yoked now, and I'm like, he's definitely bigger than he was before. And you notice he used to wear a tank top all the time.
Mm-hmm. Now he's got the cutoff
up, and it's covering his biceps up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm all, why would they be doing that? You know, unless they don't want anyone to see how much bigger the dude is. But that's my theory: is Daryl's found the juice.
So he's trying to hit that next level, because I mean, Walking Dead's going to probably be done in a couple of years, so he's trying to get more action star-ish.
Well, and that's what I wondered. That's the first thing I thought too. I wonder if he's getting ready or just did an action film.
Well, he's done a couple. I mean, Norman Reedus has been, and nothing big time, but he's actually, like in the off season, have done a couple movies. One, I think he was a cop and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, you probably wouldn't have heard of it, but I kind of looked at it on IMDb one time, and yeah, he's, because I was interested to see what they're doing in the off season, because a lot of these guys, they're good actors on that show.
Oh, they're really good actors.
So I mean, it's like Andrew Lincoln. That guy had a career before The Walking Dead, and he's the star of it and everything. But movie wise, it's got to be costing him some money. You would think.
Which one's Andrew Lincoln?
Andrew Lincoln is Rick.
Oh, okay. See, I'd never seen him in anything before either.
Well, he, if you ever watched Love Actually, which I watch every Christmas with my wife, he is one of the stars in that movie.
No.
Yeah.
Someone would revoke my single man card if I admitted to such debauchery right there. No.
Yeah. So I, like I said, I have my yearly Love Actually roundup right there. So that's how I knew Andrew Lincoln before he was on The Walking Dead.
I'd never heard of him or never seen him before. I had no idea who he was before The Walking Dead.
Well, the most interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I don't watch any of that stuff, so I wouldn't know. I mean, if it's not on Discovery, History, or National Geographic, or sports, I pretty much forget it.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing interesting about the show is how many British actors they have on there, because I think they wanted to get actors that Americans hadn't seen before, but they're maybe famous over in Britain.
Yeah.
So like Maggie, Morgan, Rick, the governor was British, and there's a few more. Jesus is British, so, or at least maybe Australia. But they have foreign actors that play those roles.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot of foreign actors in that. It's kind of becoming more popular in a lot of shows. I've noticed that. But yeah, we've gotten completely off track. But
Oh, that's okay.
that's
But well, not really. Let's spin Walking Dead. You know, we were talking last week about The Walking Dead and how it's a show more about survival and all this stuff, and how they're living this life. Like, take Alexandria. Alexandria is a self-sustained community because it has to be. So they've got their water, they've got their electric and everything, their own sewage system that goes through there and everything. And that's kind of what you are doing with your life right now. And actually just came out with your book.
Well, and that's what makes it interesting. The book is called Going Off the Grid, the how-to book of simple living and happiness. Buy a bunch of copies, buy more than one, give them away. But yeah, people think that they mistake it for kind of I'm on the trend kind of thing. And I go, no. I was started this 10 years ago. This has always been a dream of mine. I grew up in the sticks. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I grew up basically off the grid. The only thing we had growing up was we were tied to the town electrical system. But otherwise, we had our own septic. We had our own well. You know, we didn't have cable TV or internet back then. So we had that big antenna on the top of my single wide trailer that I grew up in, yeehaw. And, that's how we got our TV. I got like 4 channels, and 2 of them were crappy, snowy. I couldn't even hardly see them. So, I mean, I grew up not too far off of that anyway. But, after I graduated high school, went to college, and became, I guess, a little more educated and refined. I don't know if that's any better or not. I question that at times. But, then I wanted to return kind of to my roots. And that's where this whole Off the Grid project came from. And being born and raised in California, people have a hard time realizing that, they think California, they think of LA, San Francisco, San Diego. And I go, no. I grew up in the Sierra Nevadas in the most least populated county in the state, basically in the middle of nowhere. And so it's not too far off of where I'm at. The town I live in, Northeast Washington, I'm connected to, is almost the exact same size as the town I grew up in, like 2,000 people. So, it was a project that I started that was pure my dream passion. Well, once I got into it, I realized other people wanted to know about it. And I already have my business in primal health and nutrition and all that kind of stuff and simple living. So it was kind of interesting. I just tied it in because it's a progression of simplifying and making my life easier, basically, less dependent. And so I started documenting the thing and finally got the book out. The property is still ongoing, but the off the grid portion of it, as far as the infrastructure and all that's done. So all I got now is finished work, stupid stuff that I've done before. And I'll probably throw some videos up here and there of it. But otherwise, the project, as far as the off the grid stuff, is pretty much done. I don't know. You've watched some of it. What do you think, Dwayne?
It's interesting. I mean, it's I've, unless you've done one in the last couple of weeks, which you're in California right now, so I know you haven't. I've kept up with it because it is interesting because, I live this very, very suburbia life, so I come from a rural area like you do too, and it's something that had I taken a different road, it's something that I could have seen myself doing too, So it's. But the videos are really interesting because you see that, when somebody thinks somebody's living off the grid, they're thinking they're in some shack out in the middle of the woods with no driveway where you just kind of walk to the nearest town and get your stuff and come back. But it's not like that at all. At least your project is not. I'm sure there are people that live that way. But really.
Well, and that's what I wanted to prove. That was part of the project too. As I did it, I wanted to prove that anyone could do it, basically, and that you have to give up some creature comforts, but a lot of the technology and building materials have come so far that you can live a pretty much normal life as you would. You're just living more remotely, is all. Solar's come a long way. A long way. My system cost about, total with the batteries and everything, I want to say it was around $14,000, and that's with electrician helping me install it, and, buying, having to pay for, the permits and all that good stuff. And that's another thing I did. I'm doing this the official way. I'm doing it by code, and I'm pulling all proper permits, which is not as common as people would think. A lot of people do this off the grid style kind of hodgepodge,
Mm-hmm.
and throw stuff up and uncoded buildings. And I just didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to prove that I could do it and live comfortably. And not only that, but I run a business. I'm self-employed. I'm an entrepreneur. I can't just stay in a shack and try and run a business from my phone or something. That's not going to work. So I have to have still a structure and an office and a way to work. I think, there's a lot of misconceptions. And not only that, but TV has really screwed it up too, because everyone thinks you can just go buy a plot of land somewhere and build your house in 8 weeks and that's it, and you live happily. It doesn't work that way.
Maybe if you're a millionaire.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I didn't understand this. I thought I could get a loan of some sort. I thought that more people are doing this, that there has to be some sort of bank that caters to people living off the grid. I was hugely wrong and slapped right in the face on that one. And it's cash only. I mean, that's why it takes a long time to go through a project like this too, is you got to build it in stages. Unless you have a big chunk of money to do all of it. I basically spend 6 months of the year saving up. Then I spend the other 6 months building and spending all my money. So it's this cycle that I go through. But in the end, the upside is that you own it. You did it your way. There's going to be a lot of your own involvement. I mean, unless you're rich again and you can just pay someone to build this whole thing for you, which is going to be hard anyway, because I found there aren't a lot of people, general contractors, that know how to build something off the grid. They'll tell you they know how to do it, but they're usually full of shit and don't have a clue. My guy that I ended up firing said he knew all this stuff, and he didn't know anything. I had to, if anyone watches his videos, I had to come in last year after I fired him, and he put me a whole year behind. I had to go back and fix all of his stupidity.
Well, not only did it put you a year behind, but it cost you a ton of square footage in there because you had to rebuild the interior walls. Yeah,
because the product I'm using is called Baswall, which is an ICF, a insulated concrete form is what they call it. It's basically a Lego log that's stacked together. They're mortarless, and what you do is you actually use spray foam to hold them in place until you put rebar, and then you fill them with concrete, just like cinder block. But you don't mortar it in between bricks. It's pretty different. But it's 85% wood chip, 15% concrete. It's fireproof. It's a great product. High insulation value. It has 3 inches of foam on the exterior on each brick. So it was a good product. I mean, he talked me into it. It was the right product. It was just well, we had a little technical difficulty there, but I'll start where I left off. And like I said, it was the right product, wrong installation. And that's why I wrote a chapter on it, because like I said, I've been dealing with contractors for a long time. Built 3 houses, different types. Each one was a different type. I've owned apartments. I've remodeled houses. I actually flipped a couple houses when it was a big thing back in 2005. So, I mean, I have some handyman skills, but I'm no expert. But that's why I wrote the chapter, is if you've never dealt with contractors, they're a finicky beast. And so I gave you the best of my experience in there, and how to handle them, how to deal them, how to hire them, how to fire them. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people let them hang around too long. And my attitude is be quick to fire when it comes to a bad contractor. Get them out of there before they can do too much damage. It's painful, but in the long run, it's helpful. And I think that's what people appreciate too, is I don't candy coat it like TV. What really happens on my project, you see it all. So I show, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all there. And I think that's where the learning curve comes from. And that's why I wrote the book too, is I didn't find anything myself when I went to research what I was doing and what I was trying to do. So I went, you know what? If I put this all together in a book, and it's not only my story, but it's a how-to book, because I had to research a ton of different things, different methods. I mean, putting in a septic system, I have a chapter on that. I have a chapter on wells and water, water sources, solar, geothermal, hydropower, wind turbines. I have it all in there. I basically did an A to Z of even security systems, off the grid security, which is really tricky, because there are no systems developed for off the grid. You basically I had to make my own security system based upon cellular service, because there is no reliable internet because you're off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked about satellite internet and how to get internet remotely, because people ask me, I go, well, you can get satellite internet, so you should be able to run different communication protocol. Satellite internet runs on a totally different language than a wired in internet connection. So the router won't communicate right. There is a delay. And also I've had satellite internet, and it's very spotty. It dumps out on you a lot of times. And so if you're not there to reboot it, you're not going to have a signal. You're not going to have any internet. So your cameras are all down. So I ended up doing a different solution that I explain in the book. And, even talking about how to find land. Land.
Yeah, let's kind of start from there. I mean, once you decide you're going to do this whole project deal, I mean, first of all, it just took some balls to finally go out and do that, I would have to say. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't imagine saying, all right, I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to find a place. But you just, if I were looking for a house and I moved into a city, you get a real estate agent, or you look on Willow or some local real estate thing, and you find houses that fit your needs and all this stuff. And it's easy to do. Like if I wanted a house, I could pretty much find exactly what I wanted, and it would take me a month at the most, in my price range and all this stuff. I mean, when you're starting a project like this, you're looking not just local, you're looking all over pretty much the West Coast for something.
Well, I was lucky during my government career. I was able to travel all over the U.S. So I got to see a lot of different places. And for those who don't know, I was former military, former federal agent, have an interesting, you can see my bio on my website at primalpowermethod.com. Interesting background. But with that travel, it helped me because I got to see a lot of areas for free. But what I recommend to people is going and vacationing. Plan your yearly vacation around a place that you're interested in, that you want, if you want to live more remotely or live off the grid, or not even off the grid, but just more remotely. You got to spend time in that area. And that's what I did. So I spent and narrowed it down to, I liked the Northeast Washington area. I liked it the best. I ended up working a case in Spokane and kind of fell in love with the area. And then I spent more and more time. And then I went, okay, this is where I'm really going to look. So I spent about 2 weeks there traversing the whole Northeast quadrant of Washington in a rental car. I just looked at everything, and then I narrowed it down to a county, and then I narrowed it down to a couple areas in that county. And at first I had this terrible real estate agent who didn't know anything, and I got rid of him. And actually the small town I was in, I went to the local bank and asked them if they had any foreclosed pieces of land that I could pick up. Did they have anything listed through the bank? She said no. She kicked me over to the local real estate office that was right across the street, talked to an agent. I said, this is what I'm looking for. He referred me to another agent who he says, I think this guy is, he knows the area where you're looking at. Went out the next morning and found my land and got it for at least, it was half the price of everything I'd been looking at. So people go, well, you're real lucky. No, I spent 5 years prior to that looking at properties and searching around. And that's where I want people to understand. That's why I wrote the book, so people have the truth. They're not seeing this BS on TV and all this. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, because this is basically your dream home and you're building it. I mean, it's all you. It's not a real estate agent going out and finding your home in the perfect neighborhood in the school district that you want. There's none of that. Commute to work, it's a totally different animal. And that's why I say what I preach to is be patient and plan. That's the key to this whole project. Do not jump into this. Literally, the area where I'm at is littered with people who have come up with the same idea, didn't do their homework, and were out of there in 6 to 12 months back in the city.
I'm sure there's empty, half-done projects all over the place.
All over the place. I mean, I don't know how many half-done houses there are listed. And it's twofold. Either they couldn't hack it or the building experience got them. It ended up being far more expensive. They got a bad contractor. They ended up being way over their head, and they had to bail out. They just finally said, we can't afford to finish this. And there's a lot of those out there that are houses half done that they just couldn't afford to finish. Yeah. And that's, again, by not doing your homework and understanding the process. That's contractors. There's a whole group of them in areas that literally wait for out-of-towners. They're foaming at the mouth for an out-of-towner because they're going to take you to the cleaners. They have no intention of ever finishing your project. They just want to pick as much of your money out of your pocket as they possibly can and then move on to the next one. I mean, I've heard of contractors that literally only do out-of-towners because they just rip them off. They know they're going to make a ton of money and they're not going to have to finish the job.
Well, I'm looking at a picture right now of kind of out of the front of your place at the valley down below. I mean, it's a beautiful location.
Well, and that's what I mean. What made mine interesting, and this is where my experience helped me. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I've at least grown up in the sticks. I've owned multiple properties. I've owned land. I still own land in another state. That when we went up there, it was difficult. There's 2 roads in, and they're old logging roads, both of them. So it was tough getting in. The front route was shorter, much shorter, but it was beat up. Totally beat up, but it was a power line road. So they came in after I bought it and fixed all the front of the road to the front entrance of my property, and I didn't pay a dime. All I had to do was put in another about 150 yards of a switchback in the hill and build that part of the road, and that was it. The other side of the road was pretty brutal. It was long. It took about 45 minutes from the main road to get to the property this way. And I had to cut through a bunch of other properties coming in. But when I got up there, literally there's nothing there. It's raw land. I mean, there's no power, there's no water, there's no nothing. You're just standing on a barren piece of land. And it was an old logging site, which all the real estate agents I had talked to in the past told me they don't even look at them because logging sites are stripped. Well, that ended up being the wrong answer because logging lots are actually some of the better lots. Because a good logging company won't strip it bare, and they put the landing, which is where all the heavy equipment is, where they debark and stack the logs to be trucked out. Well, that is usually a smart logging company will put that at the building site where they think someone would build a house. Well, that's what my guy did. I didn't even have to do that much dirt work for the building spot. He had done it. I had to go in and smooth it out and do some work a little bit, but I saw the potential. And I went, okay, yeah, it's a difficult property, but this will work. I can make this work. Most people, A, couldn't find it because the real estate agent didn't know how to get to it. Or they looked at it and went, oh, no, this is way too hard because there's no power. The closest power is 1.5 miles away. It was going to cost me $80,000 to run power, and I was going to have to do it above ground, which meant power poles all the way up, which also meant that I was going to have to get permission from every landowner from the point where there was power all the way to my property. That just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I wanted to live off the grid, but that solidified what I was doing. Because let's say it would have cost me like $10,000. I would have built the house off the grid, but I would have been tied to the grid just in case. Kind of thing. I would still have power running to it, but I would still run that house off my own power system. So, and people do that. They're tied to the grid, yet they put in an off the grid system. So they only use the tied to the grid system when they have to, kind of thing. And those systems are a little trickier and a little harder to put in. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain, and that's why I wrote the book too. It's a whole long process that takes several years, and it is definitely, I hate the term, but you're definitely thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
It's a totally different lifestyle. It's a totally different building process. And again, like I said, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be directly involved in the building of the house and working the property. That's just the way it is. Like I said, unless you're rich. And if you're rich and you have a bunch of money, well, your off the grid project is going to look more like Hawaii. You know what I mean? The big island has some remote areas in the lava fields and stuff where those houses have to be off the grid, but they're like $5 million houses. You know, that's a different, totally different animal too. That is not the general public, you know. Their alternative power costs more than my whole project. You know, and they have all appliances. They have, central heating and cooling, and because they've dumped way more money into their power system.
I mean, it's kind of just interesting to me that I mean, even in today, that it's even possible to be able to do that. To have a livable, very modern facility that you live in and still be off the grid. Like, I was reading somewhere just recently, somebody tried, I think it was in Atlanta, that tried to make their house off the grid, and they actually ended up getting in trouble for it.
Yeah.
Because the city just wouldn't let them do it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you have to be hooked into the system.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of one of the weird things. It's almost like society doesn't know how to deal with something like that.
And you're dead on with that. And it is actually against the city ordinance or regulations to run your house off the grid in most places.
I know it's probably because they want you to be attached to the grid to give energy back.
Yes.
When you have excess energy.
Well, and what's happened now too, it used to be that you could sell your extra power back to the power company. Well, they decided they didn't like that so much. So now a lot of things, I know actually where I lived, I rented a place where the owners put in a $40,000 solar system. Well, it was attached to the grid, obviously, so they thought they could sell the power back. Well, the power companies got sly to this and decided to change it and say, oh, no. All you get to do is use what power comes in when you have power, but any excess, we don't care. We're not buying it back. So the power company is screwing you in two ways. They're forcing you to still stay tied to the system. Then they're not buying your excess power back. So now your solar is even less efficient than as advertised in the beginning. And it is. This lifestyle is people, even in my area, they're actually stopping letting people drill wells. The drilling company that did my well warned me. I put my well in over 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's been about 3.5 years now, if I remember right. Right around there, maybe 2. I can't remember. 3 years roughly. And when I went to put it in, the guy told me, he goes, hey, you're putting your well in at the right time because it's getting more and more difficult for people to get permits to drill a well. And I went, oh, great selling point. Okay. He was dead right. Literally right now, it has become far more difficult, and they're getting ready, from what I heard, in certain counties to outlaw all well drilling unless it's agricultural land. Forget it. No private landowner, they're going to scratch it. And I went, wow. So it's getting very, very interesting how the lifestyle that I'm trying to do, which is simple and more detached. Well, the government doesn't like that so much. They don't want people being detached so much from the system. And it's weird. It's just really strange to me. But it all boils down to money.
Yeah. I mean, and look at the state of Florida. It was just until recently that activists have finally, I think, allowed
Florida to change their laws where you can even have solar power.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the Sunshine State, or is that California?
No, it's Florida.
Okay. So the Sunshine State wasn't even allowed you weren't even allowed to put solar panels on your house.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that it was quite a battle. And I'll guarantee that, again, they're not allowed to sell their excess power back to the utility company. I bet that was part of the deal. So the power company's, okay, we'll lose some revenue, but, and what they do too is they just raise your prices, just raise the rates. I mean, we've seen it in California. In California, in Southern California, our electric and water rates are ridiculous. I shouldn't even say are. I'm not a part of this anymore. I come here and visit. I'm not a resident. And it is outrageous. I mean, I have friends in the summer, if they have a pool and they run the air conditioning and it's hot, their bill can kick $600 to $1,000 a month.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I kid you not. The average, if you're not using a lot, is right around $300 if you got a family. And for me, I didn't use a whole lot of stuff, and I didn't have air conditioning in my last house, which is actually, people are pretty shocked. A lot of houses in Southern California do not have air conditioning. A lot of them. So my bill was around $150, and I traveled a lot. I wasn't home. So that was part of what my plan was too. I just got sick and tired of California. It's outrageously expensive to live. It's crowded. There's so many laws and regulations and taxes that's why part of this plan kind of kicked in too. But it's funny now that I go to some place that is more open-minded in this type of living, and it's starting to get clamped down even there. So I'm telling people, if you want to do it, you might want to step on the gas and start sooner than later. And that's what spurred me along. Me and a good buddy had talked about doing it for a long time, and I'd had it in my plans, and he was killed in a training accident, and life took a weird spin. And I finally went, you know what? If I keep saying I'll do this next year, it's never going to happen. And I finally just sucked it up, sold my house, sold a lot of my belongings, moved into a little small rental, and just basically started planning and put the plan into effect. And at first, I'm not going to lie, it was painful. I mean, I had a 3-bedroom, 1,700 square foot house to myself. I'm a single guy. It was me and my dogs. And going from that and all the crap I had in there that I didn't need to basically, I think it was around a 475-foot cottage that I moved into, where my bedroom was in the kitchen, my kitchen was in the bedroom, and the living room was in the kitchen. It's one space. That's it. It's basically a studio house is what a cottage is. But after I'd kind of settled in and got used to it, I can't even explain to you the burden that was lifted on me. It was huge, not having all that crap, and I reduced my financial output by 2/3 by doing that. Yeah, I went from spending about $3,500 a month just for the house and bills and upkeep to $1,100.
That's incredible. I mean,
yeah.
I know. I mean, of course, it's easier for you to do it.
Yeah.
Because being single and all that stuff, but that's an amazing amount of money to shave off that you pay a month just on life.
Well, and you soon learn. I was full blown into the system. I was a consumer. I was buying stuff that I just did not need. And again, I even talk about that in the book. I have a section on that of downsizing and figuring out what's best for you. Do you want to rent? Do you want to sell your house? Do you want to turn your house into a rental? And I always tell people, don't just dive in. Go rent a smaller place, rent out your house if you're unsure, and see what you think. Because one thing about living off the grid too is, unless you're rich, you're going to be downsizing, and you're going to be probably drastically downsizing, just because it's inefficient to try and heat and keep a big house cool off the grid unless you have a ton of money to throw into your alternative power system. That's what you have to look at. The bigger the house, the more you want your creature comforts, the bigger your alternative power system has to be, and the more it's going to cost. Mm-hmm. So there's always this balance. So I tell people kind of do it in phases, and I did it in this way. I got rid of my house. I moved into that smaller place. Then I lived there about, I want to say 4.5 years, maybe 5. And then I moved into my travel trailer. And then I moved to an RV park, and I downsized even more. And then, and this was why I owned the land and I was starting to build and all that. So I slowly kind of got myself ready for the lifestyle and to make sure that I could handle it. So again, it's not for everyone. And if you have a family, it is tougher. But I've ran into many, many people who have 2 kids, 3 kids, 2 dogs with them, and they're living out of a travel trailer or a fifth wheel or an RV, and they're making it happen. And I'll tell you what, all the people I've ran into with families who are doing it, they're pretty darn happy.
Look at it. I mean, so that's the way society was up until this century, or this last 2 centuries, the 20th century and the 21st century, this is kind of new how we live now.
It is very new. We are a tribal society. Humans are meant to be, and here's the trick though. We're meant to be in small nomadic groups for the most part. That's how humans have evolved. Not to be in huge cities packed in around a bunch of people. That is not how we're meant to interact. And just like we're not meant to interact in 4,000 square foot houses where everyone has their own room. I mean, just, 200 years ago, we were living in cabins. Whole families were living in, 300 to 400 square foot cabins. There were no rooms. Everyone slept in the living room. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's how it was. So yeah, the lifestyle we're in today for humans, and the multitasking and all that, you read all these books about how to multitask more. The human brain is not wired to multitask. It really isn't. We're a one thing at a time animal.
Let me tell you, my life has proven that now. I can't keep a thought in my head. I've got so much going on that I can't walk into another room without forgetting why I walked in there. If it's not a task that I have to do at work or a task that I have to do at home, if I'm just trying to think of something and carrying a thought with me, it's impossible anymore, just because everything I have is just detail.
It's overload. It really is. And even in my job in the government, we'd always be told, well, you need to learn how to multitask better. And, you got 15 cases and you're helping on 3 others and you're on a task force and, you're just all over the place. And I'm amazed that I ever got anything done. And being in the government, to be honest with you, you usually don't get anything done because that's how the government works. I worked really hard and it seemed like I never got anything done. But yeah, it's kind of that concept now, though, of we're told that you just have to do multiple things at one time. And what ends up happening is you end up frazzled, you end up edgy, pissed off, and lost. Mm-hmm. That's what I kind of see. And how do you feel about it? I run into a bunch of people that are just off the rails in life. I mean, they've thrown in the towel. They're just like, this is just unbearable. And it's just because we run around with our heads cut off.
Yeah. That's the main reason why I wanted to even start this podcast, is just because my life is I'm not saying it's completely that way, but it's a cycle. I mean, I am in a endless cycle, and it's not that the free time that I have is the same thing. It's come home and go to sleep because I work second shift, get up, I see my son for an hour, he takes a nap. My kids come home at 2:30. I see them for an hour, but I'm still cooking dinner for the family that night, and then I go to work. So I mean, that's my life. So it's like I'm in that rut, and that's why I want to do this podcast, just to get out there and say, hey, what else is out there? And that's what's so fast. That's why I like doing this podcast with you, because you are that alternative life, So it's nice to do this once a week, and hopefully as this podcast grows and it goes in a direction that we both want it to go in, that we're going to find freedom through other people doing this, and
Yes.
and I think that'll be cool.
Well,
But
and for me, I ended up getting tied into the survivalist communities and self-reliance communities. And trust me, I wasn't in these communities. I don't like belonging to groups. I never have been. I'm an odd bird, as you know. We both are in our own unique ways. But they kind of found me because a lot of the things that I was doing on the health side, a main podcaster became very interested in what I was doing and found one of my articles and brought me on, and the community really loved what I was doing, and they're all, "Oh, you're into all the stuff we're into." And I went, "Into what?" I didn't even know. And I'm all, "What's a Can you guys explain to me what a survivalist is?" Because you get the moniker like that, and people instantly think you're out with a bow and arrow in a loincloth, living in a friggin' animal skinned teepee or tent or something. And it's totally not that. Being a survivalist is more about being self-reliant, more self-sufficient, not relying on society and the government to do things for you. That's more of what it's about. It's more about freedom is the way I look at it, and not going around. And people think of survivalists as very right of center, and we're not. We're actually very center. We're right in the middle on a lot of things, and a lot of us call ourselves libertarians. There's some people who call themselves anarchists, and there's many labels, but that's the world I'm kind of in. But like I said, I don't like to lay claim to belong to any group. I'm in Gary's world, and it's always interesting because I don't know. People think I've thought all this stuff. I don't. There's times that I'm just flying by the seat of my pants trying to figure it out. But for me, spending half my life in the government and going through the grind of life, I said to myself, I'm done. I've had it. This cannot be the way I'm going to live my life. There's no way I'm going to grind myself till I'm 70 years old, maybe have a couple years of decent health, start pooping my diaper, lose my mind, and then it's over. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what we're being taught. We're being taught, the cradle to grave mentality. As soon as you're born, you're in the system, and you get out of the system when you die and go in the ground. That's it. And actually, after you die and go in the ground, we're going to still put that on your relatives to have to still fight the system after you're dead. For all the things you left behind, inheritance, whatever, taxes, whatever you owe, we're going to go after someone else for that even after you're dead. I mean, that is complete, utter bullshit. I mean, that is not the way I feel we should be living. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a person who says, go live in a friggin', like the Unabomber or anything like that. But there's got to be a balance there. There's got to be something in the middle where we get some pleasure out of life, we give back, we contribute to society, But right now it's more of, I feel almost as if we're just pawns in the game. We're just being used. We're being used to spend money and keep the machine going. That's all we're really for. And birthing factories to produce more drones, more workers.
That's definitely the way it feels. And, I work in manufacturing in a factory, and it is, if you want a job that's same shit, different day, go work in a factory. Because it is just revolving, feeding the system every single day. And, you think that, you work in a plant that builds 2,000 cars a day, every single day, except weekends. And you think, where does all this go? And it's just a machine. There's a car that comes off the road, a brand new one comes on. Somebody else buys it. It's the system just keeps going and going and going. And that's everything. Everything rolls like that. And that's just, that's the capitalist society that we live in.
We've been trained to be ultimate consumers. That's what we've been trained to do. It's no secret the American economy is 70+% based on consumerism. That's how our economy rolls. That's how it grows. That's how, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking like I want to collapse our capitalistic system. But what I think is, as we were talking about in that other episode that we didn't use, is, that we are in an oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're in. It's business and companies run the country, basically. And I know people freak out and think we're in some weird topic and, oh my God, Gary's book's going to be a manifesto. It's not. If anyone who's read it, and I've gotten good feedback, it is, like I said, a how-to guide of going off the grid and simplifying your life. I mean, that's what it is. But there's some underlying tones that people who want to do this are looking at. And I used to think I was weird thinking this way and that I was one of the few people. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people catching on. And basically a lot of people have said, screw this, I'm done. I'll take a lot less money. I'll live in a smaller house. I'll try and start my own business and run things my way. And sure, I won't have a brand new car. I won't be able to go out and buy a 70-inch TV that I don't need. But damn it, I'm going to be happier. And that's what I'm seeing, is people are now starting to put happiness and living in the moment ahead of just being in it to be in it, basically. Almost like you're forced. That's how I felt. I don't know about you, but I felt like I was forced into being something that I didn't necessarily want to be. I'm like, shouldn't I be able to make my own choices? That's what I've been told, that, America's about freedom. But yeah, we are probably the freest society in the world, but we've definitely kind of lost our way. And
I didn't choose to do what I do for a living, but it just, my dad worked in the factory, worked in the auto business, auto manufacturing for 33 years. And I always said, man, there is no way I will ever do that. And I owned, my wife and I worked in insurance, as you know, and
Yep.
we had a pretty good life. But it's like when the stock market crashed, when the recession hit in 08, 09, man, it killed us. And, we were a young family getting ready to have twins, and I had to go out and get a job, and the system gathered me up at that point. We lived a pretty free life and did what we wanted to do, and we took trips and we did all this stuff. But, man, the system jumped up and grabbed us by the ass and dragged me into it,
I think it did that to a lot of people, and it did it to me. I mean, part of that was me changing my lifestyle too, because I felt like I was just a whisker away at all times from not being able to pay bills. Even though I had a savings account and, I had 6 months, but I never felt safe. I felt like I was just living paycheck to paycheck, and the stress that went along with that. And, having stocks that I kept, my 401k that I kept seeing go to trash and going down. And no matter what I did, even with the matching funds, and I just was like, this isn't right. Something's wrong. And like I said, the way I felt after I kind of unloaded all those burdens, especially the financial side, but also there's an emotional side to it too. Because you get attached to stuff. And I never realized that. As I'm watching that dining room table that I used like 4 times, as I'm loading it up on the top of this guy's Explorer, we're strapping it to the roof. I had a blowout sale. I sold over $10,000 worth of stuff in like 36 hours on Craigslist.
Wow.
I put it all on there. My entire house was on Craigslist.
Did people think you were insane?
Oh, people were stoked. I mean, one guy showed up and bought half my stuff. He had rentals. So he came in and just bought everything I had. He goes, "Oh, I could put washer, dryer." He goes, "I'll take all your appliances right now. I've got the trailer." And so that helped. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching that table go away, and I went, God, I love that table. And I had this emotional connection to something that I'd used 4 times. Never sat at it. I never used it for anything. I'm single. I ate at in front of the TV on my coffee table. And I just sat there, and when that thing left, I kind of went, wow, that's screwed up. Why am I even thinking about a stupid dining room table? But that's how screwed up we are. That's how we've gotten sucked into stuff. What's a dining room table have to do with anything? And that's when it kind of clicked for me. I went, okay, I get it now. I got it. But it took even a couple days after that. I was depressed and kind of bummed out. And I'm like, oh, man, am I a loser? Because now I don't own a house and now I'm a renter. And it was this almost like I self-labeled myself. Because we've been taught that in order to be successful, you have to own a house, 2 cars, wife, kids, all this. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but we're told exactly how we're supposed to live and act. And to me, I've always been kind of a wild, free spirit a little bit. I got a little bit of hippie in me somewhere. I don't know where. But like I said, going and doing that transition, it's hard to explain. And I've talked to other people who have done it, and we all have the same feelings of, after you finally make the change and you're in that smaller place and you've gotten rid of all that stuff, it's almost like you're breathing for the first time, because so much pressure is lifted, just completely lifted off you. Because now you go, okay, I'm not attached to a home. Because once you get into a home, you're stuck. Literally, you're stuck to that area. If you got to move, it's now a major endeavor. Well, heck, when I was renting, I had all kinds of ideas. I was like, I got a travel, I can go anywhere, and to have that freedom, that became overwhelming. If this sounds, it's ironic in a way. I finally get what I want, and it freaks me out because now I have so much freedom, I wasn't sure what to do. And again,
crazy.
It was, and I've talked to other people about it. You're running your own business. I set my business up to where I can run it remotely, so I don't have to be in one place to run it. I can run it anywhere. I'm running it right now in California, and everything ships out of Washington. So I run it remotely, and I run everything myself. But with that, like I said, came mixed emotions of, it's like, okay, now that I've set myself up to do what I want, shit, what do I want to do? You kind of go and you start racing through all those childhood dreams, and you're like, well, I could do this, and heck, I could build a tree house on my property and live in a tree house. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff starts hitting you. But that's where, it evolved into my Off the Grid project, because that was part of my lifelong dream. So I decided to pursue that.
Well, I can't wait this late in the summer to hopefully around Labor Day to come up and see the progress for the first time and actually see it live. I think it's a trip I'm looking forward to.
Well, so many people, I've got this huge list of people who are waiting for me to completely finish.
Hey, I don't want you to be completely finished. I want to rough it.
Well, it will never be done. When you have a property like this, as I've talked to a bunch of people, you're never done. Because there's always something to do. And that's the beauty part about it too, is there's always something for you to do. And it's kind of amazing. And I think a cop is pulling up on me right now.
Well, as I said, I was waiting for that to happen.
Leaving my my lifestyle that I live, I'm doing this podcast in my truck because it's too noisy in the house with my family. So yeah, I'm getting pulled over by I've got I think a local sheriff now. Again, here I am. I'm just sitting in my truck with my laptop doing a podcast, and I'm doing something wrong. So I guess that tied right into the book and what I'm talking about, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Well, we're at an hour, so I think we can get off here and let you deal with this.
Well, he ain't got out yet.
Okay, but he will.
Well, he will. Let's finish up. My book's available at primalpowermethod.com, and it's on Amazon, and I have some free downloads, and it's in Kindle format as well. If you go to primalpowermethod.com free or off-grid resources, there is 2 free downloads for living off the grid. So with that, I got to roll down my window and talk to this officer. So I will sign out. Again, it's primalpowermethod.com.
All right. Good deal. All right. Thanks, Gary. Talk to you later, man. Good luck, and we'll talk about this next week.
All righty. How's it going?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good.
Same, going.
What's that?
Go. How are you, sir?
Oh, good. I was actually recording a podcast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a business that I run.